Hello and welcome back, and that's right, we are doing more PS5 SSD testing, and we're returning to one of the top tier drives out there, the WD Black SN850. This is our third round of tests on this SSD, and if we go into the settings there, you're going to be able to see, if we go into storage, that we've already moved a bunch of games over. That's right, I'm not going to make you guys have to sit through and watch the transfer of this and the initialization. I've already done that before. We're going straight into the action. It's going to be a much shorter video today. And as you can see, the games we're going to be utilising today are Borderlands 3 for the PS5, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Oddworld Soulstorm, Subnautica, and In the Rays of Light. We've even migrated over the data from the PS4 Borderlands 3 file, even though that's not necessary, but just so to get the ambiguity out the way from anyone watching it. So, make our way onto the desktop here, and the first game we're going to be going through today. Again, just before I start, I do recommend you've watched the other two videos testing this drive before you go any further. It will give you some idea of the background about transferring data to and from the internal SSD to the M.2 SSD from WD here, and some of the internal benchmarks when you boot the system. I recommend you check those out before watching this, but nonetheless, let's go into this. So the first save we're going to go with is Borderlands 3. What we're going to be doing here is booting the game directly from the XMB. Now, for those that have played Borderlands 3 before on the PS4, you'll know that the load time of that game was horrific. It took ages watching that loading bar and claptrap running back and forth. So we're hoping for something good here. We've already got how it looks on the internal SSD lined up. So we're going to put them side by side and start in 3, 2, 1, go. So again, this is a full game load we're going for here to get to the title screen. That's what I'm not going to do any skipping forward. We're not going to tap a single thing here. We're just going to let the whole game play itself out, because although these publisher logos aren't really going to tax the system, when you see claptrap walking across the screen, that is generally, here we are, a horrendously long load time on the PS4. So we're testing these expansion SSDs versus the internal drive. That was so much quicker than the PS4, understandably, because it's the PS5 version with its SSD, but how did it compare with the internal SSD? You tell me. But here we are on the desktop of our game. So from here, we can make our way into Borderlands, and we'll get ready for the second test there. We're not going to include it there because there's a sign-in moment, and from here, we're going to get ready to click on continue to take us into the game. We're going to see how they compare loading them up. So let's go. 3, 2, 1. Lovely and quick. Again, anyone that has played the previous game, the PS4 outing for this game, will know just how slow the loading on this game is. It's crazy. But yes, again, there's lots of upscaled stuff. We've enabled a bunch of stuff as well on this, just to make sure it's all kind of as good as it can be. There's not a lot of world loading we can do in this game. The pacing of the game kind of prevents us trying to tax the game too much in that regard. Again, we can do a few bits and bobs making our way through the game, but for the most part, what you're seeing here is pretty much all you can really do. You can't really push the game too much into a forced loading or low texture load, but for the most part that seems absolutely fine to me, loading how I would like it to load. So for now, let's go ahead and load into our next game, which is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Come out of Borderlands there. And again, this is a two-stage test, this one. We're not going to test how long this game takes to load, because again, lots of publisher logos, and it's got a bunch of EA Online connected stuff that just completely screws with the results, so we're not going to do any of that. What we're going to be checking here is a full save game load. We're going to be bench testing how that looks against the internal SSD, and then we're going to load one of the specialist kind of training missions that's got quite a lot of stuff on screen, and just to see how the two compare there. But as mentioned, none of this can be skipped, and there's a bunch of online connectivity, so not much point going ahead with trying to time this. Let's fast forward there. It's a long old load, isn't it? I know they want to maintain that kind of movie aesthetic, but my God, that takes a while, doesn't it? So we should be here at the title screen. So our first test, again, loading the save game. So 3, 2, 1, go. Should have the timers there on screen. Should be a pretty quick load. Let's have a look. See how they compare. And we're in the game. Decent little pacing. I wish the game wasn't so dark, but there's not a lot we can do there. But yeah, we're seeing no slowdown the lighting, no drop in frame rate. So again, everything's what I would like to see at this juncture. I think we're fine. And I can't believe I did that, making the lift go down again. Never felt stupider. But you know what? We're going to continue from here anyway. We want to make sure that there's no drop when we go to a larger area. Time to make myself into a bit of an idiot and go up there. But yes, I'm not seeing any texture problems up close. If we sort of move the camera around to check that out, I think we're fine. So from here, we've got the lighting effects. We've got no slowdown there. I think we're fine. Yeah, I think we're doing okay here. Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's make our way onto the training area, which again we can do if we head back where we came from. I know that awful lift. You're absolutely sick of seeing it. So am I. But what we do is we head back to the circle there and load up the save game to see how that compares against the internal stuff. Again, we're going to try and do as few edits here as possible to make sure you're seeing everything, you know, as you would see it in game. So if we head back into that area there, from here we're going to load up a level, the Kashyyyk training mission, and just see how it compares. So again, we're not going to test this bit too much. We're just going straight into combat challenges. And from here, we're going to test the loading of the Kashyyyk level. Again, comparing against the internal SSD, there's still quite a lot of loading in this game regardless. But it's this mission here, so let's compare them against one another. 3, 2, 1. And there is the start. So that felt like it took pretty much the same amount of time, if I'm honest. I saw no real difference there, at least from my mind. I think for now, that mission seemed to load pretty quick for me. And, you know, I'm happy with what we're seeing here. Even if we saw a slight bug there. Did anyone see that? Not the literal bug like a bug on screen, but a kind of jump bug there that certainly happened. But for now, I'd say that's fine. Let's make our way into the next game, which is In Rays of Light. Now, In Rays of Light, obviously a hefty indie title. This one, we're going to load 2 different save games, save 3 and 4. And we're going to load this game now from the menu. 3, 2, 1. Of course, we're not going to be looking at the load time here. We're just going to head our way into that one. So I've done a lot of these videos now. I'm totally on rails at this point, everyone. Carrying on forward again. This is a game that is surprisingly well packed with graphical assets. You know, obviously it's no, you know, Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that, but I do quite like the open world setting on this, and I think a lot of the lighting effects as well are worthy of note. So again, we're going to load save 3 and then save 4. So again, we're going to go into the load and start together. 3, 2, 1. And we're in, lovely and quick. And we have the open world. So again, no slowdown, no texture pop, no like frame rate issues I'm seeing here. Again, I'm nice and close, no texture issues. Again, we can run through at quite a hefty pace. Sort of go into the building area here, cut through, get the game to be forced to load in some assets perhaps. But no, for me that's running fine. The game itself does have a locked FPS system, so it will make any drops will have to be significant to be worthy of note. But that seems to be running okay for my eyes. I think we're fine by that. So let's head back. And now we're going to try a different load. This time we're going to load part 4. So we're going to go with 3, 2, 1, go. Here we are on a tunnel segment here. Again, lots of crazy light around here. Lots of stuff going on screen. But we can make our way through. And yes, it still seems to be running pretty fine for me. Again, I don't know if you can hear that, but the controller is rumbling like absolute crazy. So again, lighting is a problem here. I don't know how well you're going to see any of this on screen, guys. Sorry about that. But yes, for me, the assets are in place. There's no drop in frame rate, which, let's be honest, is going to be a nightmare to make out with all of the light flickerage that the game is putting in its wants to be Blair Witch type style here. But yes, I think we're doing absolutely fine on this game. We're making our way through the evil corridors, and for me the game is seemingly running as well as I would like it to run. Also, weirdly, this is me holding the run button, which tells you quite a lot about the pacing of this game. So, let's make our way into our next game, which is Subnautica. Now, Subnautica, again, a PS4 game that's been upscaled to PS5. Again, we are going to be loading a very specific mode. We're not going to be looking at this from the title screen. And we are looking at loading up a creative mode save. Now, Subnautica is a big world environment. Think Ark, think Forest, think Conan, those sort of games. This is a game that has a lot of assets to deal with. Now, what we're going to be loading is a creative mode game with no constraints. So again, we're only doing this to load the entire world and lots of assets, and it is going to take a while to load. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the WD Black SN850 compares against that internal SSD. Let's find out. 3, 2, 1, go. Has a kind of bare bones, old school PC game load there, with the percentage and the naming of assets being popped on screen. It's a real throwback to the late 90s, early 90s of gaming there. Always a fan of stuff like that. This is pre-loading bar, everyone. But yes, that felt pretty snappy to me. Got to say, particularly after playing that last game, this game definitely feels a lot snappier after in Rays of Light, and how the pacing of that wasn't quite as fast. But we are on the water segment here. We can start moving around. We'll try and push the game into some of those assets gatherings there, going through. And again, it is a very beautiful game, this. Again, I've seen it a few times. I keep meaning to play through it properly. I'm very much a fan of these survivalist games, but generally I play them in co-op. If anyone does want to co-op on those games, again, the Forest current one, Forest Hell, absolutely loving that. It is insanely difficult, but definitely my jam. But this seemingly running very well indeed. We're making our way down here absolutely fine. And there is some sort of nightmare thing above me there, which I'm going to avoid like the clappers. But I'm seeing no drops in frame rate there. If we go into the overside world, I know this does introduce a lot of assets when we do this. If we make our way into the high-end area here, let's do the splashing of the water effect there. And again, there's lots of stuff going on there. But for me, oh, there is this, whatever that is, it's there now. And we can make our way into our final game, which is Oddworld Soulstorm. Now, this is a nice and straightforward save game load, lovely and easy. This one, we're just going to be loading straight into an early portion of the game. And from here, it should be nice and clear what we're doing. And lots of obvious assets. So let's load into our final game. 3, 2, 1. that felt the tiniest bit slower. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in the edit, but again, I can't see what you guys can see when you've got the old footage there on screen, but that felt the tiniest bit slower for me overall, if I'm honest. But yes, it's still running absolutely fine to my mind. It seems to be doing what it needs to do. We've got all the effects there. I do wonder how much of that's going to be in the capture, but yeah, running fine, no drop in frame rate, the effects, none of the on-rail segments being affected, and me not knowing how to jump for toffee. Certainly me trying to rush this did not pay off there, did it? But I think for me, that's still running absolutely fine there, and I'm prepared to say that that's running well, although I am going to check in the edit there just how quick it was against the internal loading, because I do think the internal loading may have been the tiniest pinch faster overall. But I'm going to wrap things up now and start moving data back onto the internal SSD. And then from there, let's summarize everything we've seen today. So, as we move the games back, let's move the games and apps. What can we say? Well, our third range of testing, I think it's gone pretty well indeed. It's not been a tough series, I'll be honest. We are holding back still. We're doing a second massive showdown with more SSDs coming a little later into September. So we are kind of building up to that with some of the biggest games, it has to be said. Again, Spider-Man's going to be on there, Assassin's Creed's going to be on there, kind of the big hitters, and that's going to be our next massive comparison that is going to feature a bunch more SSDs, not just my top 5. When going through these series of videos to different games, I appreciate that you want to see certain games on these, and I get that. But one, you've got to kind of span the gamut of different games and look at games that have massive textures or games that have very complex hidden loading. I appreciate that the likes of Ratchet and Clank have very obvious loading, and you can kind of see all the assets coming in, and particularly Miles Morales with that whole world building is all present there. But a lot of the games have very, very subtle loading that you'll only really see if the SSD fails. And that's kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for games that are constantly loading on the fly. Not just whole world assets and resources, but textures. Because a lot of the time you won't know things are going wrong until things start getting blocky or the low-res textures drop, and you won't even know because you'll be playing a game thinking that that's just the way it is, and it simply isn't. That's why we're aiming for these games. 3 of the 5 games we've talked about today have got texture depth kind of engines there, where as you move away from things, not just far off distance, but slow to far proximity, where the textures are automatically lower resed in order to keep them lighter on the engine. Those are ones that we're trying to look out for here. Again, Borderlands 3, classic example of that with the cell shading. But this has been my third test of the WD Black SN850. There may be one more test with this SSD before the big showdown with a bunch more games, so do stay tuned for that. If you've enjoyed the video, click like. If you want to learn more, click subscribe. We are still testing loads of SSDs with multiple tests. We're trying to do the gamut, hopefully test 15 to 20 games on each one of these SSDs to give us a much more rounded idea about what they can do before the M.2 SSD firmware update for Sony PlayStation 5 is live. So it'd be good to have all this information here in one massive resource when that goes live, and then people out of the beta can really enjoy it. So if you're one of those people, click subscribe so you know these vids are coming. Take advantage of the links in the description to all of the SSDs and indeed the heatsinks and guides that I've talked about, and visit over at NAS Compares for free data storage advice and all the assistance you're going to need setting up your SSD for PS5. I'll see you next time.